welcome to another session of lectures by Lob-EZ. I'm your host, Dr. Lob-EZ. In today's video, we're going to be talking about realism, the artistic and literary movement. So, what exactly is it? It is an artistic movement genre that comes on the heels of Romanticism. Okay, so this is going to pick up sort of mid-1800s, mid-19th century, and it's in response to Romanticism. Realism is an artistic movement that is sort of like a criticism of modern society. And instead of showing an idealized depiction of reality, they attempt to show life as it really is, both in art and in literary work, okay, as a social criticism, all right, to kind of like reveal those things that are kind of untoward, those like the underbelly. You see this in journalism too, with the muckrakers. They attempt to kind of discuss things that need attention, and typically they're social conditions. Okay, and so the term realism is, as it says, an attempt to show and depict life as it really is. Okay, and so if we're going to be focusing on reality, we're not necessarily going to, these artists and art authors are not going to necessarily depict people who aren't sort of themselves real. And what I mean by that is, who's your average person? Who's the majority of the population? So that's going to be the working class. It's going to be the people who are oftentimes most sort of, the word victim comes to mind of the modern age. Those people who have had it rough, okay, because of the social conditions, all right? And so that's who these guys tend to focus on. All right, so there's a couple of authors worth mentioning. The first is a French novelist. His name is Gustave Flaubert, and he wrote his most famous literary piece is Madame Bovary. Okay, and so this story follows as the protagonist a woman who has sort of been under the spell of what an idealized view marriage is supposed to be, and that is far from reality. So when she meets and marries her husband, she finds that something is left wanting, meaning she's unsatisfied. And so in an attempt to try to fill the hole that exists in her heart, she gets involved in a number of sexual affairs, and that doesn't fulfill her either, and because of all the problems that she's created for herself, she ends up committing suicide. All right, so that author seems to be attacking middle class values as unrealistic. Okay, the second author that's worth mentioning is Charles Dickens, and he is probably more worldwide famous as an author, especially in the English-speaking world, but the piece that we'll focus on is Oliver Twist, which takes place in London, and it deals with the working class and the problems of poverty. Okay, and so these were real issues in the industrialized cities of Great Britain, at least that is until the 1850s. So that's when his pieces are famous, pre-1850s. And the reason why I mention that is because the challenges of the working class, the working poor, were real. Not only did they have to deal with low wages and unsafe working conditions, but they also had to deal with the challenges that urban areas created. Okay, so overcrowding and disease and crime and all sorts of things. And so this hard and realistic look indicates that Oliver Twist also, I mean, not Oliver Twist, but Charles Dickens was a critic of his time period. Okay, and like I said, in 1850, in a different set of the notes, it talks about how that is when incomes begin to double, at least over time. And we see the gap that had been growing between the rich and the poor seems to close a little bit. Okay, so the working class, starting in 1850, really starts to make some advances as far as their incomes are concerned. So moving over to art, dealing with yet another French artist, Gustave Courbet. His most famous is the Stonebreakers. Okay, and so when I look at his art, I'm reminded of a Northern Renaissance artist, Peter Bruegel the Elder, who you may recall did the peasant wedding and the peasant dance. His subjects were common people, commoners, which kind of broke with tradition, and by not showing famous people or religious subjects. Okay, and so Gustave Courbet is doing similar thing here, and not highlighting the wealthy, the elites of society, or even the middle class. Okay, so these are just ordinary stonebreakers, and what I think is important to note are the colors. Okay, so they're not bright. They seem to be sort of earthen colors, and that is perhaps to reinforce the kind of bleakness and the dreariness of not only their work, but also of the lifestyle of these necessary but sort of unfortunate workers. Okay, so you kind of get a glimpse of what the backbreaking type of work that these stonebreakers have to do in order to make roads and assist with the construction of roads. One of the other things that's noteworthy is that you can't see their faces. Okay, so that anonymity could be for a couple of different reasons. Just because they could be saying, the artist could be saying, that these people are nameless and faceless, that they don't possess any real power, and so that's why they're depicted as anonymous. But it could also mean it gives you, the viewer, the opportunity to see yourself in them. Okay, so not sure which he's going for, but it could be either or both, I guess. And the next is another French artist, Jean-Francois Millet. Okay, and so this is called The Gleaners, and his most famous piece. And what this really depicts is a very old, seems to be like an old architectural, not agricultural style, known as the open field system. And it communicates the difficulty that the peasants had with this form of lifestyle, and just what they're doing, the gleaning. These women are picking through a field after post-harvest, and they've been allowed to come up amongst the stubble and pick up additional, appears to be, grains of wheat, so that they can collect those, so that they might be able to make an additional loaf of bread to kind of stave off starvation. Okay, and so this scene again shows these people as anonymous, so you can't really see their faces. Okay, and so see the earlier painting for the reason why. It seems that the artist is showing an appreciation for their contribution, but also there's some empathy, for these women because of the backbreaking nature of the work that they have to do, and also just the harshness of their overall life. Okay? And the last painting that we'll take a look at is Honoré Daumier, Third Class Carriage. Okay, and so this 1864 painting depicts people from a variety of different social classes. You can see most prominently probably working class people, women, and you can kind of notice from their faces that their lives aren't easy, and their facial expressions seem to be sort of bleak. They have this empty stare about them, and certainly there isn't a look of happiness, okay, sort of forlorn. And then the other feature that you see is some middle class or wealthier people, and you can notice that by the top hats. There's at least one here and then a couple more over here. And, you know, it looks as if everybody's silent, not talking to each other. And, you know, I think that that's kind of the point of this, to criticize the modern age as people sort of pursue wealth. They kind of lose their sense of humanity. At least that's my interpretation of this painting. Okay, so just again a criticism of industrialization, a criticism of the current time period, and perhaps the growing divide between the rich and the poor. At least that's my take on things. So that'll do it. Short video here. Next video, we will start talking about Impressionism and more modern art. Thank you.